You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Cruikshank. Our podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts, Rachel Land and Katya Barch, as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness. All right, we are back and we're here to talk about ways to get unstuck, ways to kind of build your career as a teacher to a more thriving teacher, and some ways to do that. I am back from Bali in my jet lag haze, so we're going to see how this goes. I think it'll be some good. I think, I don't know if you've ever been jet lagged before. Sometimes it brings some clarity. So I feel like on that note, we're going to have some good topics come up.
It'll be Tiffany unfiltered. And I'm always unfiltered, so who knows what's going to happen today.
So this was based off of a seminar that we did for people on our site, and something that Rachel and I were talking about we feel like should kind of go out to the general public, because I think there were some really great takeaways for people, and we've kind of readapted it for you guys to kind of bring what we think is most important to people out there who are either new to teaching, maybe you just got your 200 hour, maybe you've been teaching for decades and are kind of feeling stuck or wanting a little bit of a path forward. So hopefully this will give you a little inspiration, maybe give you a little spark or something to chew on as we kind of talk about this evolution of our path as a teacher over the years. And I think this evolution can also happen many times over. But
yeah, I do think that's important to mention, because we're going to present this relatively straightforward phase 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's not like you get to phase 4 and, you're then enlightened and the heavens open and the choir sings. You then quite often go back to phase 1 or phase 2, depending on whether you want to change your area of specialty or focus on something different, or you move to a new area and you kind of have to start over. So we can reiterate and reiterate many times depending on how long we teach, right?
Yeah. And I think the first phase is a really easy one to wrap your head around. I think phase 1 is, you're a new teacher, you just started teaching, and it really is just about saying yes to everything and getting your feet wet. I think this is an easy one not to overthink.
Well, we say that, but I talk to new teachers all the time who are either really scared to start, to take that first step from finishing a teacher training and actually standing up in front of paying human beings and teaching a class, and people who have just finished teacher training and they're being told, whether it's by their trainers or by social media, you've got to specialize. You've got to hit the market with some really specific and clear focus. You can't just be generic. And I think that's bad advice, because you don't know yet what you know and don't know. You don't know yet what you like and what people respond to. You really just have to start and kind of see what sticks.
I think this is really common over the years too, when people are new, feeling inadequate, feeling like they're not ready. And I think we all feel like that at the beginning, as well as many times iterations over whenever we start something new or we're playing with something new, which might be like every class you teach. I think we just have to push ourselves and get out of our comfort zone. And I think that can look like a lot of different things. At first, I don't think you need to overthink it. That could be teaching friends, which I actually find the most difficult, is teaching friends and relatives, my least favorite.
Because of all the people who know you, they might be the ones least likely to accept a different version of you, and one that knows things that you didn't know 6 months ago.
Or the ones who are more willing to ask questions in the middle of class.
Or be giggling in the back row. Maybe colleagues is a safer place to start. People at work.
My mom would probably be in the back asking a million questions. We would never get through anything.
Yeah, good point. But to start with a group that feels a little bit more accessible. Maybe that's family, and that maybe it's not.
And maybe that is at work. For some people, doing something at work sounds wonderful. For others, that sounds like torture. It even could be just filming yourself teaching a little bit, which by the way, I was thinking about this recently for some reason, actually. The first few times you watch yourself teach on a video, it's it's pretty awful. It's pretty, it's just hard. It's hard to see yourself and hear yourself if you're not used to hearing yourself and seeing yourself on video or on audio. And I think it's kind of like nails on a chalkboard that you do, but you do get used to it. And I think if you can get past that part of it initially and just be like watching your teaching and noticing what's happening and learning from yourself. I think anytime I go to a yoga class, I'm always learning something, even if that's just like, I don't really like how that lands. I wouldn't want to do that in that way to my students. Again, just personal preference. We're teaching what our preferences as teachers, or that could have been more succinct, or, I really like the way they said this, or that cue really landed, or, I like that transition. I'm always kind of taking some of those things away. And so you can watch your own video too in that way of like, or even take it as a student. But I do think you do just have to push yourself to do it and go to the Armory Center or the local. I mean, it's harder to get classes nowadays at studios because I do think there are less of them. We were just talking about that, like this kind of shift in the yoga landscape. But just there's so many specialty communities that want it. I think yoga for athletes is always a huge need. Yoga in corporate settings is always a huge need. Yoga in communities,
Retirement
neighborhoods,
villages, older communities, sports teams. Yeah.
Actually, true story. My very first yoga class, I don't really consider my first yoga class teaching, but we'll just say it was in junior high. I went and volunteered at a retirement center and they called it yoga, but we were sitting in chairs and it was like sticking your tongue out and smiling, like face yoga kind of stuff. True story. But
if only there was footage of that.
I know. I think I just licked my microphone on accident, but there's needs for yoga everywhere. And, yes, the landscape of the yoga world is changing. We have to make peace with that. The trends are fading, and I will happily welcome that because the therapeutics are not going anywhere. People still need yoga. There's more research. There's more studies. The medical communities, the therapeutic communities all want it more and more, and that's just going to continue to grow. But that's a slow growth, and really we have to be committed to that. And kind of the next phases where we go to are going to be how you get into those communities. But yeah, the landscape's changed. So there are less studios. And I've heard recently, like some gyms, someone was telling me this in Bali, that some gyms are replacing, I don't know if yoga teachers, but like group fitness instructors with AI now. And so the landscape is changing. I just think we have to be adaptable. But again, saying yes to everything, not getting a specialty, just get out there, jump in, dive in, try not to be self-conscious. It's hard, right? We're so self-conscious. That's our biggest limiting factor.
And you might just have to say to people, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a very new teacher. This is all fresh for me. Sometimes naming that thing up front takes some of the pressure off. And, people are kind. People are on your side. They want you to do well. They want the class to be a good class for their own sakes as well as yours. So I find that can be helpful, but one way or another, you just have to start. It is not going to get any easier from waiting. It's not going to get any easier from thinking about it. Just get in and start. Some of the classes will go well. Some of them won't go so well. Either way, you'll learn and it will get less scary each time. So just start.
Yeah.
That's phase one, end of story.
And more than they do. I'm like, there's an outlier here and there sometimes of teachers in our classes, but most 99% of our students, like, as a teacher, more than they do. They're there to learn. You're there to help. We do the best we can. Get in, do it. Phase 2. So like, just do it. Phase 1, just do it. Phase 2 is, digging a little bit deeper. And I think getting curious about what's interesting to you as a teacher, like what lights you up, what's exciting. And sometimes that might be our own personal injuries. I know we've all had our own, injuries over the years, yoga related or not. Mine, not so much. But maybe that's injuries. Maybe that's a sport you love. Maybe that's your work. We've had lawyers teach to their law firms, like I think having a background on that population is really important to speaking to, the stress that they feel. Again, what
can be phase
what
of
lights you up?
life. We've had people
Yeah.
who've qualified as teachers, and then a couple of years later, they start a family and they become deeply passionate about pre and postnatal yoga. So, lots of things can happen in your own life that change you as a person and how you relate to your teaching,
Perimenopause. I feel like all
right?
of a sudden I have all these perimenopause patients. Like,
We're
they're just
everywhere.
like,
We're taking over the internet and the world.
which is
Look
great
out,
because I
world.
feel like I've always had some perimenopause patients, but I just feel like as a society, we're really understanding that you don't have to just live with those. I feel like there used to be this undercurrent of like, oh, that's just menopause, like
Mhm.
suck it up. Like that's just part of the landscape. And people are now like actually going to treat their symptoms. So you're like, oh, before I had to like educate people. Okay, well, we can do something about this. But yeah, so that could be phase of life, that could be athletic endeavors, that could be injuries, that could be just styles of yoga you're drawn to. That could be specific, like people with Parkinson's or
Mhm.
Alzheimer's or seniors, or I mean, there's so many. But I think this phase two should live in curiosity and maybe not even just know just yet what you want to specialize in, but you're
Mhm.
experimenting, you're diving in to learn more, you're experimenting with teaching to that and putting things out there and finding what gets people's attention, like what are people interested in, what do people want from me, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then like trying it out.
For me, there's a sort of two-sided part to this. One side is noticing in your own physical and energetic reactions, like what lights me up, what fills me up, what am I excited about, what do I research without having to make myself, what are the questions that get me really fired up to answer, which classes or populations or venues do I finish teaching at and come home feeling fulfilled and joyful rather than depleted. And the other part of it is that external side that you spoke to is, well, what are people responding to from me? What are people seeming to like from me? What kind of category are they putting me in? And where those two things overlap can be a really magic spot for you as a teacher.
And I think oftentimes they do, because when you teach something that you're passionate about, it draws people to you. Maybe not
Yeah.
instantly, but like if you give it a little bit of time, it does. Like it takes us a while to build classes, especially when it's a specialized population. But yeah, I think when you teach from that, not only does it leave you feeling more um, fulfilled and sustainable as a teacher, but it also draws those people to you, so it has a nice double whammy there.
And I think the place that people can get stuck in this phase is firstly hanging on to these say yes to everything for too long. And some of that might be practical, like you have bills to pay, you have a living to make, and so you need a certain number of things on your schedule to fulfill your financial needs. But some of it can just be the fear of, if I let this class go that isn't exciting me or inspiring me or really wears me out, there's empty space, and that can be really scary, not just financially but also energetically. Saying no to something does free you up to say yes to some other things, but there can be a time in the middle where that space is just not filled by anything. So getting stuck in the needing to be busy, needing to be filled up, needing to have every spot in your schedule filled can be scary. And the second place I think you can get stuck is overthinking the specialization too soon. Like you said, you've got some general themes and some feelings and maybe some populations or some issues or phases of life or injuries, and you're trying to fit it into too small a box too quickly. And sometimes you just have to be willing to start walking in that direction, kind of using that as your compass, your kind of milestone landmark that you're moving towards, and be willing for some of the details to become clear later. So both of these kind of require some trust, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the first part of it is also like really leaning into curiosity and not. I think we get so accustomed to seeing ourselves in a certain way and maybe how the world sees us or what people expect of us, that we can feel like we need to do it a certain way, and kind of letting go of that and opening ourselves up to be curious to what is it that really actually lights me up. When we talk about a job path, so many of us feel like stuck in these boxes of what we think we should or can do. And I think kind of taking the guardrails off a little bit to be curious. And so I would also say, like, yes, free up some time, but like don't get rid of all those classes. I think in this phase, this is like the intermediary phase where you're still doing, you know, some of the phase one of like having your, you know, gosh, the easy words sometimes are hard. Like your your sustenance, like your meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
What am I looking for? You know, like your basic classes that you're already teaching to pay the bills, and keeping those, but starting to free up things. Like maybe you get rid of one class that keeps you up really late or gets you up really early so that you can have some energy to create something or to start a new class that maybe won't pay as much or maybe will eventually build over time, but like investing to test. I'm testing things out here.
Yeah.
I'm not fully shifting.
And I think that's a really important proviso because it did take me quite a while to make this shift in my own teaching from having, you know, 17 to 20 classes on the schedule. Obviously didn't leave me time for much of anything else. And so my process of noticing what I was drawn to and interested in and starting to get more teacher training, I knew that I wanted to work with people one-on-one, but I just didn't have any time in my schedule to do that. So instead of just weeding out the classes that I liked the least, I did exactly as you suggested. I looked at my schedule. I found the places that were sort of outliers. This one requires me to get up really early in the morning, but then I'm up and it frees up the rest of the morning. So I'm going to keep that one. These two, you know, the second one's not my favorite class, but it's right next to the first one. That's really efficient use of my time. That then frees up the evening. So kind of looking at my schedule and seeing where I could make small changes that did free up some time and energy without I'm canceling everything. Now I'm only doing X and having nothing to pay the bills with and nothing to fill my time with. So it's a real phase of exploration. You can't expect the answers to come instantly, right?
I think that's a good point too, because so many full-time yoga teachers spend so much time running around. And even when they have that hour or two between classes, it's not really enough to really do anything productive.
You got to eat,
and so
you got to drink. You might be driving.
And I've never been someone, I honestly can't remember. I'm sure I have, but I can't really remember a time where I've taught back-to-back classes. It's not really my thing, but I would definitely back it up to like seeing patients or other work that I had to do so that I could have bigger chunks of free time to create content or write up trainings or workshops or whatever it is I was working on at the time. And I think finding that is really important. A lot of teachers, I think, have a lot of fear at this point because as yoga teachers, we don't make a ton of money doing our group classes. And so it can be hard to get rid of that income when you kind of rely on it, but being able to rearrange your schedule so that you can do the things that will also make you more sustainable, like one-on-ones and workshops and things like that, I think is really important. So this is, again, the curiosity phase, testing out the water. And this might last a while. It might take a while for you to really find the place that's interesting to you, that lights you up, that feels enjoyable. And obviously we all have days when we're tired. It's not that you're never going to be tired, but that you really enjoy doing it. Maybe that is just doing one-on-ones. Maybe that is just doing therapeutics. It might be very specific. It might be general. And again, you might be kind of like feeling out a few different options until you kind of hone in on the one. One or
this
two or
becomes
three.
Almost a new version of saying yes to everything. Is now you've got your direction. You might have to try a few different things in that direction to kind of figure out what people respond to from you, what you enjoy doing, what fills you up, what's worth the investment of time and energy. So I think of this as kind of like meditation. It is a slightly messy phase where the whole point is to be open and curious. And as human beings, I think we tend to want to look for certainty and answers a little bit too quickly. So you just have to be willing to kind of be with what is for a while, maybe for a little while.
Which I kind of love. I don't know. For me, this is like the jet lag zone of like opening up your brain a little bit. And I love like a new project, writing a new book that like anything can happen possibility. Mm-hmm. I mean, even divorce had a little bit of that for me.
What's possible now?
New possibilities, what's ahead, which, I mean, obviously all these things have some fear involved in them as well. But we're talking about phase 2. So now phase 3, I think, is where it gets really interesting, where you have an area or two. I mean, I feel like we might even have a couple of areas. I think it's good to have maybe one you're focusing on at first, but having an area of so something you want to specialize in, something you want to dig deeper on. Again, that could be something big like seniors or athletes. That could be something very specific like Parkinson's or whatever that might be. But in this phase, this is really about digging deeper, really investing in yourself, really starting to pour your energy into getting all the information you can and starting to create, what is it that I can offer to my community to help with this specific need?
And I always think of ongoing training here, obviously becoming more skilled. But if that's not in the cards for you for whatever reason, don't feel like, well, I can't do anything if I can't enroll in an advanced training. You can still access lots of information through research, through podcasts, through the internet, through reading, books, all the good stuff. So it's just about gathering information that you're interested in.
And research on your mat. For me, I always think of like, when I have a topic I want to play with or something, a class maybe I want to create on a specific topic, it's kind of like research I get to do on my mat. And some of that research might involve actual research and poking around in research articles or on the internet. I can find some interesting things there sometimes. And a lot of times it's research on my mat. And then also research of thinking about this demographic, and if you have experience in that field of this community that you're serving, like the lawyer teaching lawyers or whatnot, I can put myself in their shoes really easily, but really trying to put myself in their shoes and consider what their limitations are, what might restrict them or hold them back. Maybe that's props, maybe that's location, maybe that's time, whatever that might be. And like what it is they really need from you, where you can really be helpful. Is that in a workshop where you can give them a lot of information they can use on their own? Is that in online classes that they can access from their home because that's more convenient? Or is that in person because they're an elderly community and they need you there to help them? Or maybe community is a big part of that approach, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that the area that people can get stuck in this phase is the sort of imposter syndrome. It's kind of like the 200-hour qualification all over again. I definitely know some people who get too stuck in the research phase. They want to know more. They do all the trainings. They do all the research. They do all the reading. But then they feel like they're not enough to share that information with people. They're not expert enough. They're not trained or qualified enough. And sometimes you just have to be willing to share from what you're passionate about and what you know.
Yeah. And I think that can be especially intimidating online where there's always an expert, there's always someone, and in life, there's always someone who knows more than you. But if we wait, if we let that one person who knows the most about the topic and the whole world do all the things, like we still need to be out there serving our communities. And I think it's really important to remember how much you have to offer. I feel like I say this at the end of every one of our trainings is like, trust in your capacity.
You have enough. And you are enough.
Well, and like our job is to be of service. So I think we have to acknowledge that we have a lot of information to share. However you learned that, whether that was through work with people, work with yourself, through research, through trainings, to acknowledge what you have to offer and then find a way to provide it and know that it might take a little experimentation to find what works for that demographic that you're trying to focus on. And really trying to, in this phase, lean into what's important to you and trying to find ways to really connect to this specialty. And of course, you might be still keeping some of those classes that pay the bills, some of those reliable things until things start to transition. But I'm in this phase really trying to get more specialized because the more I specialize, the more I put myself out there, whether that is workshops or classes I do at a studio, whether that's posting things and sharing them online, whatever that might be, it's really telling my community how to use me, where I can be helpful. It really is like advertising it. And it really just does take getting the word out there, putting it out there as, you being a resource in this specific community. And, then it just takes some time and sticking to it.
Yeah, you've brought up a few things there that I think are worth reinforcing. The first one is this has to be sustainable for you. Even if this is your part-time gig and you have a main full-time gig, it still has to be sustainable for the amount of time and energy and effort that you're putting in. And so that often means it's going to take some time and you may never be completely specialized. You may still have some of that bread and butter stuff on your schedule. That's completely fine. So be willing to invest in it being a long-term endeavor that needs to make sense for you. The second thing is be willing to say to people, this is an area that I'm newly excited about or newly passionate about. Like I said, when you were a newly qualified 200-hour teacher, sometimes naming the thing takes some of its power away. I'm not a PhD in whatever this thing is, but it's something I'm really excited about at the moment. That can kind of set you free from needing to be the expert and the knower of all things. And then finally, I guess just continuing to delve in and find different ways to share. We can sometimes get a little bit of tunnel vision, can't we? Like it has to be classes, or it has to be workshops, or it has to be online courses. But the yoga world, the technological world, they're all changing so fast that there are new ways of doing things all the time. And you're just looking for the opportunities to reach your people in ways that make sense for you and make sense for them. And that might look different in a year from now than it does right now.
Somebody's still got to write the articles to feed the AI.
True. Right now, that's my job. Knock on wood.
But I also think, there's no rush too. I think so many people have part-time jobs as well, which I think is actually can be really nice for a lot of people to not have to put the full load on teaching full time. And I think having this other job can, be really helpful, especially as I'm kind of building this new specialty. If that's something interesting to you, it can provide a little relief, I think, for yoga teachers. And then we get to really enjoy what we're doing. And then at some point, we find that perhaps the yoga side of things has grown and it's time to let go of the other thing. I also think that a big part of I feel like we've talked about this before, but a big part of being sustainable as a yoga teacher is offering one-on-ones. And, I think, that's just, most people make at least twice as much money offering one-on-ones than they do in a group class, if not 4 times as much, especially with rates nowadays.
And you also learn a lot more, in my experience, because it's so much more interactive. If there's a population that you're interested in working with, you're going to learn so much more from the in-depth conversations you have with one person over multiple one-on-one sessions than you would from years of teaching a class of people who may or may not be willing to pipe up or ask questions or to, look for versions or variations that work for them better. You really do get to know your people better by getting to know your people better.
And you can feel more helpful because you can be more individualized. I think as a teacher, you feel more fulfilled and less drained at the end of the day, usually. Yeah. Of course, I think if you're new to one-on-ones, this is what our whole yoga medicine training is about, the therapeutic side of things, which is one-on-one, working one-on-one. And, I think if you're new to it, there is a little bit of overthinking that can happen a little bit at the beginning, but as you get into a flow, it's so much more sustainable than teaching group classes all the time, which I think is still, for most people, good to have a group class or two or a few that you offer as a way to keep connecting with your community, and also a great way to, again, connect to those private clients. A lot of times I think it just happens in those moments after class where someone's asking you a question. And I always say, like, my favorite thing is just like, it's hard to know. I think this is a realistic thing to say to someone. It's hard to know without working with you one-on-one, but here's some things to try. So I do my best to give them some things, but I'm also putting out there that, like, hey, one-on-one is going to be more specific. You have that option. You'd be
amazed how many people don't know, where they're like, oh my goodness, you work with people individually? Yeah.
Right?
We always feel like, oh, don't say it. That's so tacky. But what are they, psychic? Nobody knows what you do unless you tell them.
And I think if you put it out there just as an intention of, like, this is just very matter of fact.
Yeah.
It's not a sales pitch at all. It's just offering them, letting them know the reality that if I don't know who they are, I can't be specific to them.
Yeah. And the same thing if you're going off to do a training, if you're kind of updating your skill set, nobody will know unless you tell them. So I try to share. I'm heading off to do another course on the hip. I'm really excited to dive in. People will ask you when you come back, oh, what did you learn? What did you pick up that's new? So people won't know what you have to offer unless you share it with them, whether that is in person or online or whatever.
Which, on the heels of that too, I think also, as you do a lot, like writing content, it doesn't have to be for something like Yoga Journal, but that could be your own website or your own social media. Putting information out there is a great way, not only to give back to your community, because usually these are not, a lot of times they're not paid. Sometimes they are. But it's a way to give back to your community. But also, again, it's almost like advertising. Like, here's what I am. Here's what I do. here's how I can be of service, and then like putting that out there to your community so people can find you and know
I also
know
find
how you can be
writing
helpful.
really clarifies my thinking too. I might have a general mental construct of something, but it's not until I sit down to write about it that it kind of clarifies into, oh, well,
Right?
here are the 3 considerations, or here are the 4
Yeah.
things I would bear in mind. It does really help me get clearer in my thinking and therefore in my communication.
Yeah, I think and teaching too.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think this is kind of an area of constant refinement. Again, it does, I think a lot of this is education. Again, that doesn't have to be specific trainings. Like that could be on the podcast, that could be digging in research, that could be on your mat, that can be doing one-on-ones. I think that's a big part of the learning that I always mention in our trainings. Like when the training's done, you got a big chunk of information, but the real learning happens when you go and you use it with yourself, maybe, if that's relevant, with the people you work with maybe in your group classes, maybe in your one-on-ones, whatever that might be, maybe in workshops. I think it helps us kind of learn the information more too. And yeah.
And then there is a 4th phase.
The fourth one I love.
The mysterious 4th phase that maybe many of our teachers are in. You know, we talked about the 2 buckets at the beginning of people who were sort of newer to teaching, and then maybe the people who've been teaching for years. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in the phase of, well, I've got a good range of skills. I've got a bunch of training behind me. I know where my focus is and my passion is. But somehow you've got to kind of stay excited and inspired, keep feeding yourself, keep learning and growing and developing. And sometimes that will shift you back to an earlier phase. You discover you're passionate about something new now, or you want to express it in a different way. And you might go back and retrain, or just go back and refine your focus and be new at it all over again. Or maybe you stay in the same area. And I think you can get stuck here with burnout, with boredom, with kind of getting stuck in a rut or in a groove. So it is really important to keep kind of challenging yourself, even in this phase, to grow and develop.
Yeah. I think this is a fun one. It obviously, these are the people who are already kind of specializing, but I think for me, this is kind of the phase where you're really focused on your own self-work, I think, because especially if you've found that specialty that really resonates to you, I think many times our own experiences and our own life experience or body experiences can be really informative to that. Maybe not always, especially if it's a population like Parkinson's where you don't have Parkinson's. But I think also, I think we're all human. And I think connecting to that humanness is so valuable to everyone we work with. So your own self-work, that could be in the form of like with a therapist, that could be in the form of your own inner work, spiritual work, that could be with a physical therapist. I don't know, that could be experimenting with different physical outlets. I think I was talking about this recently in our HIP module. Like I love bringing in other modalities if it's relevant. If, I'm not going to like do HIIT training that feels totally out of place or something, but if I can bring something that sparks some curiosity or mindfulness or interest in a way that maybe especially they're not getting in some of those other outlets, bringing in whatever's interesting to you. Maybe that's specific to your body. Maybe that's, inspiring life takeaways or circumstances. I think even when we're going through really challenging circumstances like a divorce or like big life changes or maybe grief of a loved one passing, I think though everyone we're teaching to might not have those same experiences, there are human challenges within that everyone can speak to. So I think for me, this one like comes back to my own work, my own personal work, letting that inspire teaching, but also in this phase, allowing yourself to keep reinventing yourself. And that might be different iterations of your specialty, different, segments of your specialty. It might mean a whole new specialty. Maybe it's in addition to that one, or maybe it's instead of, and like allowing yourself that freedom to maybe reinvent yourself potentially.
Yeah, this is kind of where my head was going those two parts of it, of firstly of continuing to fuel your own self and to take care of your own self, and then also to be willing to be flexible about what your specialty might look like. Maybe you've been working with dozens of people one-on-one, and now you put together a short course or a small group class for people with that shared issue. There can be, lots of different ways for you to express what is now a reasonable amount of information that you have to share. But that also requires some of what we talked about in phase 2 of that meditative state of sitting back a little bit and noticing and being willing to ask questions without rushing for the answers, which is, I think maybe you love this part, but I think for a lot of people it can be challenging to just kind of sit with what is without needing it to change.
Well, I think what I love about it is like, I think when you get to this phase, there's hopefully an appreciation of like, I've done this thing. And yes, we can always get better, right? Like I feel like as humans, we never feel like we've arrived, like we can never just appreciate that we've like arrived and done the thing. But like, I think for me, there's an important part of this of appreciating, like, I've done the thing, I've carved out this specialty. Yes, it's always evolving and growing still, but I have this thing, like, now what do I want to do with it? I mean, I have an opportunity now to maybe help a broader audience. Maybe that's a book or a workshop, or maybe it's another offering within that could be helpful to them. So I get to kind of like decide what's exciting to me now. Like, what do I want to add on to this? Or how do I want to shift this? Or staying, like you said, staying open.
And I think depending on your personality, you can either get a little bit stuck in the staying in the tried and true, sticking in the comfort zone that you've created for yourself, or you can be the person who's putting a lot of pressure on yourself to always be doing more and better and faster and harder. And maybe the healthy place is somewhere in the middle where you're willing to stay with some of the things that have worked, but you're also open to things potentially being different in the future. So no really easy answers in this phase. I think it comes down to each individual and their circumstances.
I think it's funny too, because I feel like from the outside, my trajectory has always been really the same, but I feel like personally, I'm always reinventing myself and the way that I see yoga. But I think that's also just in my mindset of feeling like, okay, I have the opportunity to change now if I want to. Like maybe that means focusing on different parts of your business or different things that really light you up. But sensing that now you have the choice. Of course, I still want to make choices that will keep me sustainable and thriving. So there always is, a mind to how I balance that financially and time-wise. And I think success is not about, to me, is not about money, but it's about that balance between time and money. Do I have the money to feel comfortable in a lifestyle that's reasonable? And do I have the time to enjoy it, And so, and actually do things that fill me up, that like, I'm not just spending, think of how much of our time is working in our lives, how much time in our lives we spend working. And if that's, 60% of our life or more for some people, a lot more, 70%, 80%, there's a lot of sleeping time too. So, but if it's a good chunk of our life and you're spending it in things that you don't like, that's significant as well. I don't think everyone needs to quit their job and become a yoga teacher, but I do think that as humans, especially in midlife, there's a lot of midlife people listeling to this now, Rachel. I feel like there's a lot of midlife people in our demographic.
Like I said, we're taking over
20s and 30s and 70s and all of that. But like you start to realize like how am I actually enjoying my life? How am what am I doing that really brings meaning? What am I doing that really helps maybe the people around me? So
I do think it's important to say. Because I think there are long phases, there have at least been in my life, long phases of just having to work as much as I possibly can for financial reasons. And so when I'm in a phase where that's not the case, oh gosh, that's such an amazing privilege, isn't it? To be able to look at your time and go, I have enough for what I need right now. I have enough. Maybe there are ways I could spend my time that are more fulfilling than just more work and more money.
And this is the yoga of it too, I think. And I see this with so many friends and like friends that I have that are like outside of the yoga world that maybe don't do yoga. I feel like this is the typical challenge that we run into as humans, is that as we become more successful, whatever scale that is, we start to need more. And like, how do we start to appreciate as yoga teachers what we've created for ourselves and cultivate that contentment to not always need more, whether that's money, time, fame, whatever that might be. As yoga teachers, I think kind of coming back to that original conversation we talked about is kind of this changing landscape of yoga. I think when I started teaching in the 90s, it was like becoming a yoga teacher was basically giving up any attachment to money or fame or any of those things. You were like a humble servant. And I think there's something really beautiful to that we get to come back to now as yoga teachers. Not to say that we can't make a sustainable career from ourselves.
To pay our mortgages. That's okay.
Yeah, and I think have a really valuable career that brings meaning and depth to our lives and the people around us, which to me is priceless. Like, you can't put a dollar figure on that.
I totally agree. If you're still in the striving for enough, you just got to do what you got to do. We've all been there. But if you are in the fortunate position of, actually, I do have enough for what I need right now, it can be really tempting to go, but what about what I need in the future? And think, well, I always need to do more, have more, get more. Could you just sit with what would it feel like if that was enough? And what else would fill me up if it wasn't finances and possessions and expensive holidays and whatever your fancy thing is?
And obviously it's smart to save for the future. I'm not saying we don't plan ahead, but I just plant the seed in this question as, is it ever enough? No matter what your income level is, it doesn't matter what I'm not speaking to that specifically. Like, I just think as yoga teachers too, we can run into this. And I think it's so important to recognize that contentment that can come and the appreciation that we are so privileged as yoga teachers to have a career path where we get to provide incredible things for ourselves and for people around us. I mean, I remember feeling so guilty with my partner that, or people who I've been with who didn't have that. And I think we are really lucky. I think for those of you who have partners or friends, I mean, we all have people we know in our lives who don't have that privilege, or maybe many people, I think, who don't have that privilege to have a career that's really fulfilling and meaningful to them. So just some thoughts. Phase 4, reinvent yourself, stay open. Find a way to be content, because there's always this feeling of needing more, needing to be more, needing to do more, needing to attain more.
Maybe for you it's not the financial side, but it's more students, more classes, more opportunities, more training hours, whatever it is.
More visibility, more. Yeah.
I feel like that's a really interesting place to start wrapping it up, because everybody's got something to chew on.
Yes.
I mean, if you're a brand new teacher and you're feeling stuck to start, you just have to get in and get your feet wet one way or another. Find some people that you can teach, ideally regularly, because it's the only way you'll figure out what you like, what you're excited about, what you're good at, what people respond to from you. And then once you've done that for a while and you're heading into phase 2, you've got to make space for that being open to what's drawing me more than the other things, what fills me up, what lights me up, where do I want to focus more of my time and energy and attention. And that can take time, because, you've still got to keep the wheels on, you've still got to keep the bills paid. But eventually, as you get to the point of phase 3 of specializing in a style or a population or a demographic or an illness or an injury or some modality, then there are some real opportunities there for you to go deep and to really build your skill set and to be really refined about what you're offering to the people around you. But maybe eventually you get to phase 4, where you've got to be open to reinvent again and to sit with the question of what exactly is going to be enough for me to feel content.
Right. And I think that's kind of such an important thing too in this changing landscape of yoga, which I hear people talking about a lot these days. There is going to be a recalibration. As yoga teachers, we are committed to what we do, and we know that there's a population out there that needs it, that wants it. I think, obviously being dedicated to what we're doing and recalibrating, reinventing, and also finding ways to be content and knowing that things are changing, and finding, maybe anew. Maybe we're going back to phase 3, or phase 2,
Yeah.
and that
But
curiosity.
I think that we have the best hope in the yoga world of dealing with people as our wonderful, flawed, complex, messy human selves. Because if they want polished perfection, they'll be able to get that from AI very, very soon. If they want somebody who cares and is curious and is excited and is flawed and imperfect, then that's where we can really have a difference. That's where we can really stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully some things to chew on, to nudge you, to help you remember all that you have to offer. And I always like to remind people, as yoga teachers, our job is to be of service. And I think when we keep that in mind, the rest kind of fades away. Obviously, there are a lot of important things to consider in addition to that, but a really important way to keep things in perspective. And hopefully this provides a little something to push you and get curious and help you kind of find that next path forward. So we hope that it's helpful. Let us know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll be back for more fun chats, maybe less jet lag. I feel like it was good. I feel like, I lost my train of thought maybe once, but we did pretty good. So
between us, we held a train of thought going. That's all we can hope for these days.
You just need friends, people. That's what it's all about. A friend.
It's all about community. Thanks very much, Tiffany.
Oh, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you got something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com, or check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine. You can also email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being a part of our Yoga Medicine community. We look forward to seeing you again. The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.